Well, guys, I hate to say it, but crypto is pretty much in a time of siege. The good thing about a siege is that eventually it comes to an end if you can just survive it. It's not going to be pretty, but I think Cardano can come out just fine. Ready? Let's go. Today, we're going to discuss a lot of the little details surrounding the great crypto wars being waged by the current administration, including Gensler's possible relationship with Binance, the possible impact of the Ripple case on Coinbase and Binance, the judges assigned in the cases, and some more details emerging in Cardano SIP 1694 governance. If you feel like this image is not quite a siege since there's no enemy army surrounding a castle or a fortress, or if you're finding value in these videos each weekday, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. Listen, I know some of you sensitive souls out there are already formulating your complaints. I don't feel very comfortable with your thumbnail because it has a firearm in it. I don't feel like that's very appropriate. Listen, it's basically a digital painting, albeit an AI one, but it's a digital painting of a zombie horde. I'm open to it if you have some better way to deal with zombies in that scenario. But based on my somewhat extensive viewing of Netflix zombie shows, you get the firearm today. It's just a digital firearm, and those are zombies. No humans are in danger in that image. Those are zombies, and it's digital. It's all make believe. Don't worry. Don't get all frustrated about it. It's a painting. It's just a painting. So we are under siege, though. Like I said, that image is also not really a siege. It's more like a wave of zombies attacking this poor guy who's just trying to defend himself with his digital firearm. But it's really not a siege. But crypto is under siege. This is going to feel like we are trapped in a castle or a fortress, and an enemy army, probably of superior firepower, has surrounded us. They're just going to wait us out. It's siege warfare. They're going to wait us out till we run out of water or food or arrows or bullets, mortars, cannonballs, gunpowder, whatever it is. They're just going to wait. They've cut off our supply lines. They're just going to wait and hope we just sort of go away. We surrender. That's what they're hoping for. It's going to be a long battle. So we already know how long the Ripple case has been in litigation. Forever. For some of you, it's longer than you've been in crypto. The Ripple case has been ongoing for longer than a lot of you have even been in crypto. Binance and Cardano might be worse. Binance and Coinbase might be worse. Sorry, it's Coinbase. Cardano was obviously mentioned in both complaints, but it's Binance and Coinbase. The reason they might be worse is because they have so much money. I mean, granted, Garlinghouse and those guys had quite a bit of money when they started as well, which is why they've been able to carry out this litigation for so long. But Binance and Coinbase have gigantic litigation war chests. So this is going to be a long, drawn out war. This is not going to be anything that gets resolved this year or possibly next year, maybe even the year after that. This could go on and on and on forever. Obviously, they could capitulate. Like in the case of Binance, all bets might be off if the DOJ files something, and those rumors are obviously out there. We'll talk about those in just a little bit. But if the DOJ files something against CZ personally, if the DOJ files something against you, we're talking about criminal. Usually, we're talking about criminal charges, so that could change that could change the calculation, I think, pretty significantly for Binance. And you notice things are already changing for Binance, even just today. Just a few minutes ago, before I turned the mic on here, an email went out from Binance.us saying they had lost their fiat on and off ramps. Not quite yet, but they're sort of preparing everybody. So this email says, they may have to pause their USD fiat channels as early as June 13th, 2023. So why is this happening? It's because these exchanges, Coinbase and Binance, they are not banks. And to do the banking stuff, like ACH, the normal sort of fiat on-ramp stuff. See, even down here, they mention ACH because that's the one most people want to use, at least in the US. To do stuff like ACH, you got to be a bank. And obviously, the Fed is not going to let Binance or Coinbase become a bank. So they have to have a relationship with a bank. They have to have a banking relationship. And those banks, when they find out you are being sued by the SEC, they decide to end their relationship with you because banks are not trying to get involved in complex litigation with the Securities and Exchange Commission. That's not part of their game plan. It's not part of their business model. So when a customer of theirs ends up in very high profile litigation with the SEC, what do? They let that customer know they are no longer going to be a customer. And it looks like that's probably what happened with Binance here. So they're losing their banking relationship already. But you already know the thing about CZ is that CZ is no fool. And here, CNBC Crypto World. Yes, CNBC, your expertise in crypto is so deep, and your interest in crypto is so extensive that you've crafted a whole crypto world for us. But CNBC Crypto World had this to tell us. Binance lawyers allege SEC Chair Gensler offered to serve as advisor to crypto company in 2019. And this, I believe this isn't actually the first time we heard about this. I think these kinds of facts have been alleged in the past. But this is quite an interesting story. It's a whole story about, correspondence sort of between Binance and Gensler, about Gensler being possibly some kind of advisor to Binance. And, there's possibly a lunch between Gary Gensler and CZ in Japan. And all this, of course, was going on when he was a professor at MIT teaching crypto courses. And then later on, of course, he becomes the chair of the SEC, and Binance is the bad guy. But according to these allegations, if these things turn out to be true, it sounds like he was in discussions with Binance to become, at least an informal advisor to Binance. And we even saw this week on Twitter, we even saw someone coming out who claimed they had been a student of Gary Gensler during this period, and part of the impetus for them to get into crypto had been that they had written some kind of a paper about BNB as a student. Sounded like as a student of Gary Gensler, and Gary Gensler had sent that paper to CZ. So that's how extensive the relationship was that's being alleged, at least in these facts, by Binance. So this article says, according to a new filing from Binance lawyers, SEC Chair Gary Gensler offered to be an advisor to the crypto exchange in 2019. At the time, he was at MIT. Gensler has been cracking down on crypto industry over the past year, and earlier this week, of course, sued Binance. So this is this doesn't look good, and crypto lawyers were pointing out today on Twitter that people have never seen an SEC chair with this kind of a past relationship with any entity that the SEC was suing. This is something unprecedented, according to those posts today. And I personally can't think of an example. I can't think of any example where a sitting SEC chair tried to enforce against an entity that they had any kind of relationship with in the past, especially like this, where it sounds like there were ongoing discussions about him possibly being an advisor to the entity. This is pretty unprecedented. And the interesting thing about this is it is, as people pointed out today, it's likely to produce depositions forever. Basically, Gary Gensler has guaranteed himself that he can just be in depositions forever. I mean, we don't know. It might turn out that he's not going to be the SEC chair for long, a year from November. But those depositions, they're going to stretch out for a long time. So if Gary Gensler is no longer the chair of the SEC, a year from November-ish, really a couple months plus that, because that's just when the elections happen. But if that turns out, he's kind of just bought himself the involvement in depositions, possibly for many, many years beyond that, when he's no longer even at the SEC. Because I think we can guess that possibly those suits are going to be ongoing for a lot of years, even beyond the term during which he's at the SEC. Speaking of Gary Gensler, it looks like he got some bad news recently. So you might be aware the way cases work is that right about at this point, judges get assigned to the cases. And these judges are actual human beings, so they have a track record. There's usually something we know about them from their past because they've actually, they're humans who've actually lived real lives. So we kind of know, about their political leanings and, some of their stances on certain issues. So we know who's been assigned in the Coinbase case. This is Judge Jennifer Reardon. So, what do we know about Judge Reardon? Wikipedia tells an interesting story. So, if you're not in the US, you don't know how this works. The way it works is the president will appoint federal judges, but then the Senate has to confirm them. So they have to figure out a way to get through the Senate to make everybody in the Senate, whether they're on the right or the left, to sort of, go along with the confirmation. Not everybody, but they've got to get confirmed by the Senate. So they need to collect a certain number of votes. And Judge Reardon was originally appointed by Trump, but her nomination was blocked during confirmation. And what does Wikipedia say about this? She had been strongly recommended by U.S. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. This is really interesting because Kirsten Gillibrand is a Democrat. So this is a Trump nomination, but U.S. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, she's a Democrat from New York. She tried to push through Jennifer Reardon's confirmation. She was strongly recommended. Kirsten Gillibrand is the Gillibrand of the Lummis-Gillibrand bill, which is one of the most pro-crypto bills that's ever been introduced in the U.S. Congress. I would argue that the bill we talked about yesterday, the digital asset market structure proposal is, in my opinion, I like it better. I think it's even more crypto. I think the Lummis-Gillibrand bill was kind of like, I would describe it as very pro-Bitcoin and like tolerable for the rest of crypto. But I would describe the one we talked about yesterday, the digital market asset structure proposal, as being pro-crypto. It sort of seems, equally good for everybody in crypto, not as sort of Bitcoin focused like the Lummis-Gillibrand bill seemed to me. But nonetheless, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand was the co-sponsor of one of the first big super pro-crypto bills to be introduced in Congress. She is a friend of crypto, and she was the person who tried really hard to get Jennifer Reardon confirmed when she was nominated by Trump. Didn't work. It was blocked. So then Biden renominated her. This is interesting. So at first we had, obviously, a president on the right nominating her. Then we had a president on the left nominating her. What happened? So this time, according to reports, Senator Gillibrand was able to get the confirmation through. And what happened? After the Senate confirmed her nomination, so after she was already in, the dragon, U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren, announced that she would vote against Judge Reardon's nomination if the Senate had proceeded to a roll call vote on Reardon's nomination. She had been confirmed by a voice vote, which is exactly like it sounds like. They just they just vote by voice. But Elizabeth Warren, after the fact, and she included it in the record. If you go to this notation here, it's going to show it in the congressional record. Elizabeth Warren made a note in the congressional record that she would have voted against Judge Reardon if it had gone to an actual roll call vote. So here we've got a judge whose confirmation sounds like it was pushed through by maybe the most pro-crypto senator among the Democrats, and it was opposed by the most anti-crypto senator. This sounds like great. You can never quite tell what's going to happen, and I'm not implying that she won't be impartial. I'm sure she will be completely impartial in any case she hears, including one involving crypto. But at the same time, Coinbase was probably so happy to get this news. I mean, Paul Graywall and Brian Armstrong probably high-fived each other when they saw the news that Jennifer Reardon had been chosen as the judge in their case. Unfortunately, Binance had no such luck. They were assigned Judge Berman Jackson. So, on paper, if you look at this particular judge, you can see just from her Wikipedia, she was appointed by Obama. So, you might be thinking, okay, the party of the current administration does not seem too pro crypto. So maybe that's not so good. But then if you go down here to the personal life section, you see that Judge Jackson was married to Daryl W. Jackson, a lawyer and a senior Republican political appointee. He worked in the Office of Export Enforcement as Assistant Secretary of Commerce for George W. Bush in 2005. So she was appointed by Obama, but she obviously is able to tolerate the other side of the aisle because she was married to a Republican who's actually Assistant Secretary of Commerce for George W. Bush. Her son is somewhat famous for winning 13 games of Jeopardy, and he says, "My mom is liberal, my dad is conservative." So they did get divorced, though. It looks like they did get divorced. So at least at one point in her life, she was able to tolerate the other side of the aisle. To the extent that you think that might matter, again, I'm sure she'll be impartial in her judgment in this case. But I'll bet if you ask CZ tonight which judge he'd rather have, Coinbase's judge or the judge he got, he would definitely change places with Coinbase. That would be especially true after seeing crypto lawyers posting things like this. Binance drew Amy Berman Jackson in the District of DC, known to be, I'm not saying she is, mind you, but known to be progressive and pro-federal regulatory enforcement. Big oof. Probably the worst Binance could have done, and probably bad news for crypto in the US generally. Other crypto lawyers were posting things like, oh, she's appointed by Obama, but maybe this is neutral for Binance. No. Other lawyers are posting things like this, saying that she's probably the worst Binance could have done, which is too bad for CZ. I think he could have used a break, given all of the additional things that are going on in his case, and all the things that might come if we get a filing out of the DOJ that could potentially be criminal. And of course, those rumors are definitely circulating. This post said, update, lots and lots of agency insider chatter that the DOJ is close next week to filing claims against Binance. The specific charges are not yet known. The existence of commingling of funds in the SEC claims will most certainly be one of them, although more serious charges are being whispered. Meanwhile, everybody's expecting the ruling in the SEC versus Ripple case. And this is Judge Torres. So it's interesting to note that Judge Reardon is a new judge, right? She's a Biden appointee. She hasn't been on the job very long. So it's going to be interesting. If Judge Torres gives Ripple the ruling they want and says that XRP tokens trading on secondary markets are not securities, this would be huge for Coinbase because Judge Reardon and Judge Torres are in the same court. So it wouldn't be binding on Judge Reardon, of course. Like Judge Reardon could rule completely differently, but Judge Reardon is kind of new on the beat and Judge Torres has been around for a while. So you could guess that it's possible Judge Reardon's decision could be influenced by Judge Torres's decision. They've kind of got to see each other occasionally. So if she rules completely differently than Judge Torres, that's something that could happen, but it's very possible that Judge Reardon's decision, could be in line with whatever Judge Torres's decision is on the XRP tokens. So this wouldn't completely, people are already commenting on this post right here because this post is saying it would undermine the entire basis for the SEC's case against Coinbase. It may have an influence on the part of the SEC versus Coinbase case that's about the security status of those 13 tokens that the SEC names, including Cardano. But there's also the staking allegations. So the staking program, the Coinbase Earn program, or whatever they called it, the SEC is probably going to allege that that was a security in and of itself, regardless of whether or not those 13 tokens are securities. And, they can make their own little Howey their own little Howey test, case just about the staking program without reference necessarily to the underlying tokens. They've also got all the enumerated laundry list of securities in Section 2A1 they can hit there. So none of that matters. But what matters is we are going to get this Ripple. It sounds like everybody's expecting this Ripple ruling very soon. I believe next week. What is it? You guys probably know. It's like Tuesday, I think everybody's expecting it. So that'll be interesting. That'll be interesting because it could have an influence on this Coinbase case. The Binance case, obviously, totally different circuit and district court with Judge Berman Jackson down in DC, as opposed to these cases, which are happening in New York. But this is going to be interesting because we're going to get the Ripple case, and it's going to it could possibly have some impact on these other cases. It's interesting to note here that people are already speculating we could end up with a split in the circuits. So obviously these cases, could get appealed forever and ever. And we might end up with a different ruling by the circuit courts. These two New York cases could go in a completely different direction than the Binance case down in DC. So if that happens, that split in the circuits would eventually have to get resolved at the US Supreme Court level, which is super interesting. I think all of us in crypto, watching the way sort of the regulatory history of crypto has unfurled, I think all of us would not be shocked if we ended up one day with a US Supreme Court case to decide once and for all what's going on with securities law and crypto. Finally, we have some new reports of information about SIP 1694 Voltaire governance. So just a reminder, we're definitely going into the Voltaire era of self-governance in Cardano, and SIP 1694, and we're kind of already in it, but SIP 1694 is just one vision of how Voltaire self-governance could work, albeit, sort of like the leading vision of how it should work. So apparently there was a stake pool operator meeting where dReps under SIP 1694 were specifically discussed, and we've got a report about how a few things are going to work with dReps. There will be So SPOs will also be able to become dReps. This kind of makes sense to me because the SPOs only vote in certain circumstances, which we've talked about multiple times on this channel. They are voting in many fewer circumstances than dReps. So it kind of makes sense if a stake pool operator also wanted to be a dRep, they should be able to be a dRep. There is no saturation level for a dRep and no concept of a min fee for the rewards for being one. I think this is also definitely the right choice. Min fees definitely seem to contribute to multi-pool operating by a lot of multi-pool operators. So it doesn't make sense for them to duplicate that fee parameter with the dReps. I think this is definitely the right thing, not to carry that over, that min fee concept. So I think that's definitely the right way to go. There is no saturation level for a dRep. This is sort of a free market concept for dReps. It's sort of interesting. I guess it all depends on, all of this eventually is going to have to be in the context of how much the dReps are going to get paid. Like, how much are we talking about here? Is it going to be a gigantic amount if the saturation level of a particular dRep is very high? Is it going to be a very small amount? I think that'll definitely have an impact on the magnitude of, how much people care about these issues. I don't think we have a good idea, or at least I haven't seen any good descriptions of how much the dReps are actually going to be making, at various saturation levels. If it's an inordinate amount, if it seems like a gigantic amount, then I think people in the community are really going to care. They're really going to get specific about all of these different parameters. If it's a much, much smaller amount, probably not so much. So this is good, though. We're seeing a little bit of progress and reports of, a little fleshing out of how the dReps are actually going to work. You'll remember we're basically going to have this sort of concept of a constitutional committee, which would, initially be the founding entities of Cardano and maybe some other parties, but then they could sort of get, kicked out of office, if we don't like the way they're voting on certain issues. And they don't vote on everything. They only vote on certain things, just like the SPOs. Then you've got the dReps who are sort of voting on, almost everything, it seems like. And then you've got the SPOs who, like the Constitutional Committee, are only voting on certain issues. So I like that we're making some progress. Looks like things are getting fleshed out for SIP 1694, Voltaire governance. I hope you had a great week. This was definitely a very busy week with a lot of news, not all of it positive. We survived it, though. I hope you are looking forward to a great weekend where you're doing fun summer or almost summer things if you're in the Northern Hemisphere. And I will talk to you soon.